Welcome to PM Express Business Edition as we discuss a lot of things that are happening on the broader continent and the countries in the region. And the IMF, after the launch of its Regional Outlook Report, what is this document saying about the economies in the region, Ghana, the threats to opportunities, and the fund as a whole and its outlook for the region going forward? We are privileged to engage the Deputy Director of the Africa Department at the IMF, Kathy Pthilo. She's been on a visit engaging or doing a lot of meetings here in Ghana. It will be great, and welcome to Ghana, Kwaba, if I'm right to say that, madam.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
You've been doing a lot of things whilst you're in town. I mean, help us appreciate, what have you been up to?
Thank you. So we're here to launch in the region our regional economic outlook, and we engage with various groups. We had a nice launch presentation yesterday with a lot of people from lots of organizations. Also, the Minister of Finance was there and the Deputy Governor of the Bank of Ghana, and people from all kinds of organizations. Then we've been at the university, we had meetings with CSOs, so really trying to talk with people about our outlook and hear their views then of what are important issues in the region.
For you at the fund, how critical are these engagements for you? Because some are saying that, well, it's always the Washington, D.C., and often how critical are these engagements to the fund in terms of putting together your report and appreciating those on-ground engagements?
It's critical. So we want to do launches in the countries of different languages. So we have trying to come to an English-speaking country, go to a French-speaking country, go to a Portuguese-speaking country, and again, really hear from those countries and the people how they think about what's going on in the region and what issues that they would like us to look more deeply in. What things are we going in the right direction? What things could we even improve more? We can only hear that here in the region, not only just being in Washington.
How critical would this feedback be for you at the IMF in terms of after this on-ground engagement?
Well, yesterday at the University of Ghana, we had discussions with students, and one thing we asked them was, what are some topics that you would like to see us come back in a year to have done some analysis on? We took really good notes and gave us ideas too for things we might go deeper in.
And does it give you any different feeling that, listen, you had your economists around the world and even around Africa sent you the report. Now you are on the ground engaging those who matter, those that the economic proposals impact?
Indeed, in the discussion with the CSOs, that was one point that they were continuing to make, that, you know, the discussion here is, you know, economics, but what does it mean for ordinary people? And they think that they can give a good perspective on, you know, how ordinary people think about big issues that we discuss: inflation, depreciation, government spending, corruption. So I think it really helps us to hear the perspective. What does it mean really to a broader audience?
This is a regional economic outlook report. Some will say that why Ghana could have gone to Cameroon, Zambia, Senegal. Why Ghana in terms of launching this report here?
So we launch in different places because we do this report twice a year. And so we have been in all of those places and launched in those countries, and Senegal, and actually in this time also in Cote d'Ivoire. So it was interesting, the minister and the deputy governor at the event that we had felt that launching in Ghana this time was very appropriate because as they read the report, they thought there were a lot of issues that were relevant for Ghana. But I think that's our objective each time that we visit a country, and you can never have a story that is fitting all countries because there's so much differences country to country. But there are aspects of what we discuss that resonate well in different countries, and so they enjoy having the launch there in that country.
I'll be coming back to the bit about the report and what it talks about Ghana and then going for it. But for the IMF, and when we were in Washington, D.C., this regional outlook, it's big for the IMF. You look at the other regions, and at every engagement that we had, the press engagement, there were comments like, there will still be the regional outlook report for country-specific questions and all the rest. Why is it so big for the IMF with respect to this regional outlook report?
Well, we look globally at issues, and then of course we work closely with individual countries on programs or lending programs or our policy advice or providing technical assistance. And then we also, as I said, work globally. So we have the World Economic Outlook. But I think these regional economic outlooks are then the really good opportunity in that middle place. It's not the details of the engagement with a particular country and all the specifics of that country, but it's not at the global level, which is about global economic developments. It's really focused then on the region and saying, what are these key developments? What are the prospects? What are the policies? What are the opportunities for the region? You can never have a story that is the same for all countries. There's a lot of difference, but try to engage. And for Africa, there's less analysis out there on the macro. So I think we really fill a gap, and we find that incites a lot of interest and debate.
Let's get into the outlook proper. And you talked about growth, and if I want to break it down to the layman terms, I get the understanding that is the West over for Africa in terms of growth picking up strongly? And some are saying that should be an exciting news coming from the International Monetary Fund.
So for sub-Saharan Africa, there's been 4 brutal years of lots of big shocks. But we see that there are encouraging signs that sub-Saharan Africa is on the mend. And one of those encouraging signs is growth. So we're seeing a growth recovery. After 2 years of decline, now growth is set to increase from 3.4% in 2023 to 3.8% in 2024, and then 4% in 2025. And when you look across, then 2/3 of the countries are going to see an increase in growth. So it's not just a few big countries, it's pretty widespread, and that's significant. That's one of the positive signs. Another encouraging sign is that on the macro side, some of these big imbalances that affect economies and people are moving in the right direction. For example, inflation. So inflation has declined now from peaks of around over 10% in late 2022 to 6% in our latest estimate. This is the region-wide average. On the fiscal, again, fiscal deficits had really increased, and they are now down so that public debt is stabilizing. After 10 years of continuous increase, we've got debt now stabilizing 60% of GDP. So the macro is stabilizing. And the third positive sign is that frontier markets were cut out of capital markets for 2 years. Since January, we've had Cote d'Ivoire, Benin, Kenya being able to access bond markets. So these are encouraging signs. I think you asked, is it all rosy?
Have we seen the West? Because the region is so, some would say that it has not been able to build the required shock absorbers to withstand the headwinds and all the rest. When there's any problem in those developed economies, the shocks were so terrible. Do you think that from your analysis and report, we have seen the worst for the region?
Well, we're just from the spring meetings, as you mentioned, and we heard there from the policymakers that things are still really difficult. There are still these big, big challenges. And I would mention, again, three. So one is what we've been terming the funding squeeze, the big funding squeeze. This is still a big reality. The cost of financing is very high. There are shortages of financing for some governments. There are a lot of repayments due. And so the net flows that come to the public sector, external flows, they're at the lowest level since the global financial crisis. So the funding squeeze is still something we haven't turned the corner. And second, on growth, we talked about how growth is improving, but when you look at growth corrected for population growth, because population growth is also high, and that gives you what's happening with income per person, that is not growing fast enough, and we're seeing divergence with other emerging and developing economies, and particularly for those countries with our resource intensive, we're not seeing per capita growth. And the third big challenge is the shocks keep coming. And so we're seeing now, for example, lots of climate shocks. We have a really, really devastating drought in southern Africa, affecting Malawi, Zimbabwe, Zambia. And we've got a lot of flooding in Central Africa, in East Africa. So as you point out, this is a world where we're going to have costly and tight financing and still lots of shocks. So in terms of policy, it puts a premium on those kind of policies that help you try to build resilience.
So but when we come back, I'll still want to be getting more on this report and what it's saying about Ghana, the policy recommendations also to governments in the region, and also about the people as well. After all said and done, why do we make sure that this recommendation, this policy recommendation, this report impact the people down there? This is PM Express Business Edition. I'm engaging the Deputy Director of the African Department of the International Monetary Fund on the Regional Outlook Report and what it's saying about the economies in the region and also Ghana, and what do we have to do. Be right back after this break. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition as we engage the visiting Deputy Director of the African Department of the IMF, Kadi Patilo, as you focus more on the regional economic outlook, what it's saying about the continent, and also Ghana as well. And this is part of our series and discussions that we are doing on Ghana's program, the IMF, and also as we focus on the regional economic outlook, engaging the Deputy Director of the IMF, Kathy Patilo. Madam, thank you so much for your time. There's one argument that has come up, the G20 Common Framework. And some people feel that, yes, it's a great idea to help countries that are hit by debt distress and all the rest, but they think that the process hasn't moved that fast for a lot of African countries that have gone that route, including Ghana. What do you tell those who are worried that this framework is good, but it hasn't moved as fast as all the we are looking forward to?
So debt restructuring is always difficult, right? It's most difficult for the country itself going through it. Also, difficult for the creditors who take losses, and it takes time. So the common framework has been then a new process to bring official creditors together to agree on a debt restructuring for an individual country. Has it gone as smoothly as we would have liked, as fast as we would have liked? Definitely no. But I think actually we would not have made the progress that we have without it. And we are seeing improvements in the process. So the time it took for a country like Chad to get from initial agreement with the IMF to approval by the board of a program and then the first review. That time got shorter for Zambia and has gotten shorter for Ghana. So it's moving in the right direction of trying to ensure the process moves more efficiently and speedily. There's also a new global debt sovereign roundtable that the IMF and the World Bank and India, as part of their G20 process, introduced. And we think that can help also because it's a place where the representatives of the debtor countries, creditors, both the official, the bondholders, the IMF, World Bank, other people can come around and talk more about some of the general issues in a debt restructuring that influence the process. What does comparability of treatment mean? How should information be shared on debt sustainability between the parties? So if you have this kind of improvement in understanding on some of the key parameters, then this can help with future debt restructurings.
And you think that this whole engagement would help fast track the situation, because you're launching this thing in Ghana, and there are several criticisms that has come from even other African countries as well, that we saw that this was the way to go, but it hasn't moved as fast as we all wanted.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, look at the cases of Zambia where they have reached, the agreement with their official creditors, and then also recently with their Eurobond holders. And in Ghana, in January, an agreement also in principle with the official creditors. And Ghana having successfully completed largely its domestic debt restructuring. So I think, again, is it perfect? No. Is it moving in the right direction? That's what we keep pushing for.
Is it too late for any recommendations to be done to fast track the process?
We're always looking for ways to improve the processes. So that's why this Global Debt Sovereign Roundtable, I think, is important. More suggestions that are coming out of that.
And can Ghana take advantage of this roundtable thing that is the final?
Well, I think Ghana's process is on a very good path right now. And as you know, the Ghana team was here recently and reached a staff level agreement with the authorities on the program. And the next step will be then for them to reach agreement with their creditors, and that would allow us to move forward with completing the board by end June.
And you're quite optimistic that the process will be completed soon for Ghana?
That is, I think things are moving well.
Let's come to growth. And again, it appears that the fund was quite optimistic about growth again, and there are even some comment that it appears the fund is even so optimistic in the regional outlook report about growth about Ghana and even Ghanaians themselves. What went into this growth outlook as captured in this report for Ghana? So,
growth in Ghana has been hit clearly by all of the difficulties, the high inflation, the high interest rates, the currency volatility, and the uncertainty of the financial crisis in 2022. But what we've seen is that actually growth has been more resilient than what we anticipated. For example, in 2023, I think preliminary national accounts data are pointing to a growth rate of around 2.9%. And what the program had anticipated was lower. So it was marked up. And there was stronger growth in services and agriculture. And looking forward then, with this stronger underlying growth momentum, even for now this year, 2024, we're likely to mark up our growth projections to slightly above 3%. So there's been, quite a bit of resilience in growth. Now, is that strong enough? Our estimate is that Ghana could grow even faster than that.
What you have projected.
Than that, yeah, because what we estimate as potential growth in Ghana is around 5%. And we're hopeful that the reforms, the policies that the government is working on in the program will allow growth to gradually recover to this 5% over the next few years.
And it comes back to my question about how do we sustain this trajectory that is very critical for a lot of economic actors and watchers of this report and what you've said in that.
Yes, so for Ghana, I would say there are so many important reforms and policies that the government's reform program that is supported by the IMF's program has put in motion. And the important thing now, which the government is doing, is implementation, steadfast, continued implementation, and working on those areas that are going to durably restore macro stability, debt sustainability, and set this foundation for strong and inclusive growth. And right now, I think the program that the government is working on is delivering. You're seeing improvements, seeing inflation declining, and the reserves being accumulated faster, and less exchange rate volatility. So what is needed is the continued, steadfast implementation of those policies. For other countries in Africa, I think it's similar. Countries have priorities for the policies that they're working on. We identify some of these policy priorities in the report. Fiscal consolidation without harming development, working to make sure inflation continues declining, and structural reforms that help diversify both financing sources and economies. So these are the kind of things that we think will help countries with the macro foundation for growth, particularly again in this world of tight financing and what we can expect of continued shocks.
But I'm actually trying to bring this interview to an end. The time is not our biggest friend again. Two quick questions. One would ask again that what are the potential threats? Again, come back to this report and what you've said about Ghana. What are the threats, or what are the marks that we should watch, even though you have made your projections? What could be the threats, or what could derail the situation for us?
So there are a lot of risks that are out there for sub-Saharan African countries. One I would mention is, climate shocks and El Nino, which these climate shocks are getting more prevalent and greater impact. And so for some countries, then obviously, agriculturally based economies, this would impact the growth looking forward. When you look externally also, there is right now, improvement in growth in other countries, advanced economies, emerging markets. Those are the important trading partners of Africa. So if those countries don't grow as fast, if there's something negative from their side, that could be a risk then for sub-Saharan Africa, where the demand for those exports would be lower. Or interest rates. Again, we know right now that interest rates will remain higher for longer, but if there are more shocks that make us think that interest rates are even going to be higher, that could be a risk. And we also highlight, domestically, this is a year of elections in 18 countries in the region.
Including Ghana.
Including Ghana, an important election upcoming. And that's a time, the first point is that those are really positive signs of the democratic process. But there can be political uncertainty sometimes, or weakness then in reform implementation. So sticking the course and being vigilant in that time.
Madam, my final question, and we've talked about the macro situation and then in your report and all the rest. To a lot of Ghanaians out there, it's about the micro as well. What are your final thoughts for Ghanaians out there? After also than that, in all these things that you said in this report, for some of these Ghanaians out there, they're still looking at the micro situation. What do you have to tell Ghanaians in your final thoughts? And even as you wrap up your visit here in Ghana.
Well, I think for economic reforms, the governments are trying to make sure that particularly, people who are vulnerable to some of the impacts that reform has, or high prices, that the governments are really trying to prioritize protection and social programs that help them, and also that these steps are difficult, and I think we always recognize sometimes the pain that people are feeling, but that there is, sort of a lot of opportunity when you reestablish macro stability, then to be able to take advantage of all the opportunities that are here, the tremendous potential in the country for, again, really strong, inclusive growth that's going to improve people's living standards, that's going to bring, better help on education, on health, on being able to start a business, on ensuring that their children have a even better opportunity that they did in their lives.
Well, Katila, I appreciate your time so much, and wishing you all the best and safe journey back to Washington. I know this will not be the last time we will engage you on the regional outlook, the prospect for the continent, the risk as well, and whether moving on after this report, whether indeed there will be a safe landing or there will still be some turbulent time. Madam Kathy Patilo is the African Department Deputy Director for the International Monetary Fund. And this is part of our Affairs in the Suite of discussions we'll be having on the IMF and the regional outlook, and also the Ghana program going forward. My name is George Jaffet. This has been PM Express Business Edition to talk about the fund, the regional outlook, and Ghana's program. Have a great day. And welcome to PM Express Business Edition. And that was the first part in our bigger picture discussion about the Ghanaian economy and the IMF program. You heard Catherine Patilo. She is the Deputy Director at the IMF African Department, sharing her thoughts about the broader continent and even Ghana's program as well. And in studio with me is Mark Bidu-Abuaji. He's Chief Executive of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. As you have a discussion on this program, is it bringing about the expected results for the Ghanaian economy? Look at the Ghana city, look at growth. But when you listen to the IMF, they are quite optimistic about growth, the economy, and performance as well. And I'll be getting his thought from the perspective of the business community, and also bringing on board an economist, Professor Godfred Bokpeng, and will be joining us via Zoom to also get his thoughts as well in terms of, is this program getting us the result? Zambia, when the news broke about them signing a deal with the fund, look at how their currency rallied locally. Are we seeing the same thing What is happening? What are we not doing right? What about those who would also argue that the fund program itself is just part of the bigger correction that we need to undertake as a country? Maybe whether we are doing that or not, maybe that could be the bigger argument here. You're welcome to PM Express Business Edition. And are you tired of the same old political rhetoric, or do you believe in time for a change that truly represent the voices of our youth and children? Introducing Nana Kwame, who is promising, he's promising that he's not a typical politician. He's a visionary leader with a passion for making our country better through innovative industrial revolution. Together, they can change the political narrative and create a government to represent the interest of all citizens. Join Nana on the journey to build a better and inclusive future by contributing to a Save the Ghana Fund campaign. Your support matter. No matter the amount, just donate, and it's an investment in shared despite the more prosperous, equitable, and better nation. Visit www.nkb.com or dial star 8887 2042. That is 2024 #to donate. And the UPSC Law School, under the distinguished patronage of His Excellency John Ajikumkufo, former President of the Republic of Ghana, is pleased to invite you to the Open for the Business. That is the AFTA Africa Trade and Innovative Conference. The conference is designated to provide a critical and important platform for discussion on the new trade pact under the AFCTA and the trade in Africa, and take a situational review of the adoption and implementation of the trade pact since 2021, and the process of examining the challenges confronting the takeoff of the regime. Details of the conference are as follows. That is date 16th and 17th of May 2024, time at 9 a.m. To 4 p.m. GMT each day. Venue at the Kofi Ohene Konedu Auditorium at the UPSA campus. Visit social media platforms of the UPSA Law School for information on how to participate in the conference, or call us on 024-534-794. And this is a PM Express as we talk about the economy and the IMF. Before we dig deep into the IMF program, I mean, something is happening just this evening. And let me just quickly go through the statement that, and it still ties into the business environment by coming from Societe Generale. And it says that the headline says the Societe Generale Group initiates strategic review of Societe Generale Ghana. And I read, Societe Generale has been informed that Societe Generale Group, which holds 60.22% Societe Generale Ghana, has initiated a strategic review. If a concrete development were to be decided, subsequent communication will be made at the appropriate time, according to the applicable legislation. And this is statement coming from the group issued through via Ghana Business. And it ties into the IMF program, the current economic environment discussion that we are doing this evening. And I'll quickly get the thought of Magbedu Abaji, because they are members at all, but putting in the shoes of a business person as well. What do you make of this statement?
I think that they should not create more confusion in the minds of people. Before a rumor comes out, as we usually say, there is some sort of truth in it. So I would have expected that they are more forthright with their statements, whether they are hesitating or not, so that if a business person or individual customer wants to do business with them, they can make that confident statement that I'm still with SG. This statement that they have released, for me, is too vague. You can't see it clearly what the intention is. And I don't think that is good for a bank. They say money, they like noise. So I would have expected that at least a concrete statement would have been fair.
You play in this space, and if somebody says that they are taking a strategic review of a business, what does it mean?
The review could be anything. Usually, you want to evaluate whatever you are doing, look at your performance. It could be that they can even leave other things as it is. It could be that they can downsize and have a smaller, or look at just a section of the banking aspect that they are doing. They can just decide that instead of dealing with all customers, now we are looking at the corporate customers. They can also decide that they are leaving because they are not doing very well, because they are here to make money. And if they realize that they are not really making their profit as expected because of the difficulties that they are going through within the economy and they want to leave, it's also a strategic decision. So that will depend on whatever they want to do. Usually at a point in, some of them may want to consolidate to have a stronger bank, so they will be able to do the big ticket transactions that we all know. So it could be a whole lot of things. So for me, I was thinking that if looking at the rumor and how far it has gone, and the fact that people are also panicking, if I have funds with SG, if I'm saving with them, and with all this financial sector cleanup that we did at the back of people's mind and the stress that people went through, I was thinking that they should have come out with what exactly they want to do, just to clear any doubt. If really they are not hesitating, they should clear the doubt in the minds of people.
Do you think that this has rather muddied the waters?
Well, now people will be reading meanings to it. If you say strategic decision, what does it mean? I mean, people can put a lot of meanings to this particular statement. So if I feel that your strategic decision is you are hesitant, then if I have money with you, then I will take a decision on my own. If I also think that your strategic decision is to maybe downsize and I'm a staff there, I'll be looking out for what possibly will happen to me. If you're hesitating or you are downsizing, what will happen to me? So a lot of.
But SG again, and I'll come back to you because you have played in this space and focused on this space in the banking space. I mean, as a bank, if you look at the indicators, they are not doing bad.
Yes, I mean, I think their recent
numbers, over 200% jump in profit.
Yes. But I personally, with my background, don't look at the book profits.
Yeah.
I look at cash flow. Cash flow is the lifeblood of every business. So I haven't checked their cash flow, but if they are also doing well there, then that is fine. Because if you post a high, almost all the banks are posting profit, and they are also complaining about non-performing loans.
Yeah.
So the profit that they are posting, what kind of profit? The interest that they are expecting from customers, are they getting them with these high non-performing loans? So for me, maybe they are doing well, but I think that if they have a challenge and they want to exit, just as the others, the Glovo and all those people, they say we are leaving because of this, and they have left, and they give the reasons why they are leaving. If these reasons they don't apply to SG and they are going to stay with us, they should make it clear to us, so that people can make good decisions and have confidence in the bank.
I'll be coming back to you to look at the broader business environment as well, as you bring in and look at even the fund program, the CD and all the rest. But let me bring in Professor Godfrey Bokpin. He's a financial economist as well. And Prof, let me also get your thoughts on this before I come to the fund program, because it still plays in the business environment, the economy, and even the IMF program as well. For you, putting yourself in the shoes of a customer, before I tap your brains as an economist, worried by this statement, more confusion than ever, or what?
Maybe they would have served the market better with some level of clarification. But I think we also want to understand that it may be easier for a manufacturing company to just close down and pack up than a financial institution highly regulated and all of that. So there may be some procedures that they will have to go through from the regulatory point of view and all of that. And therefore, until all of that are done, probably the clarity that the market is looking for may not exist. But I think that we can't run away from the fact that the macro environment has been quite challenging, and especially for some multinational companies. They may be making profits 20%, 40%, but then the depreciation of the currency essentially wipes out everything. and all of that. So perhaps it may not be only Ghana, they may be looking at the whole continent and all of that. George, if you remember, a couple of years ago, Barclays decided to sell down its stake in Africa, right? So it's not the first time and all of that. They may be looking at it across the entire continent and all of that. But whether we like it or not, these are challenging times, not only for Ghanaian businesses, but then also for multinationals, because the impact of such macro level developments are pervasive. We can't run away from that and all of that. So I think that we can do better and all of that. But I'm again curious. If I look at the data in terms of the impact of the domestic debt exchange on the multinational or the international banks, Societe Generale wasn't that much exposed, right?
Yeah.
And all of that. So perhaps I think let's give them the benefit of the doubt. It doesn't help to add to the rumor and all of that. But I think that perhaps some strategic level decisions are being made right now, and I believe that they may be working with the central bank and going through the processes and all of that. So perhaps
and Prof, you've mentioned a very, very important thing about working with the central bank. Societe Generale is a bank regulated by the Bank of Ghana. It is also listed on the Ghana Stock Exchange, regulated by the SEC and Ghana Stock Exchange. Should these regulators act moving quickly to ensure that any contagion effect is contained as well? Because this statement has rather opened up more confusion than clarity.
Yeah, I was going to get to that point actually, George, that I think that the essence of regulation is to generate trust in a system. So let's look at all of this and the communication of it. I think I've had a couple of issues with the way we've managed the sector. A couple of months ago, there was a statement from the central bank about one of the local banks, right? Yeah. And all of that. The point is that if we don't manage it carefully, it may result on a run on the bank, right? And all of that. So I want to believe that, I think that the average Ghanaian and businesses are aware that companies are going through challenges. Some are going through some kind of restructuring that may not be communicated to the market the way we have seen in this case. But as you rightly said, given the way, in terms of the industry is highly regulated, I mean, it's also a company that is listed on the stock exchange and all of that. But I want to believe that largely there's enough that the market is aware of.
And therefore, the shocks has been absorbed already, Prof. Financial market operations.
Yeah, you're also looking at the dominance of that particular bank within the sector. Is that okay? And then maybe the spillover effect, and I think that is well contained. That's well contained.
Prof, let me also
there shouldn't be any panic. There shouldn't be any panic in the system. Yeah.
Prof, when Zambia, and let's get back to the IMF business, signed up to the fund program, we saw even the news about that agreement and the spillover on the other sectors of the economy. There are some who would still want to sit down and, moving away from the macro numbers, say that they are not feeling the real impact of this program on the larger economy. Fast forward today, look at what the currency is going through. Fast forward today, growth, and all those things. Are we wrong? Are we making an uneducated guess or question thrown here when we raise those concerns?
I think we were too optimistic about what the IMF supported program could deliver. And George, on this network, on Joy FM, we had raised the issue that, especially from the point of view of government, we were celebrating victory prematurely, right? And I think that we were a bit more on the side of exaggeration. Of course, we know that when you sign the program, the honeymoon effect, okay, is usually positive, right? But it was very clear to us that may not last for long. And I think that the IMF managing director made a comment, and our president also made a similar comment, that where Ghana finds itself, we will need something more than IMF-supported program. And that it is not the IMF-supported program that will solve all our problems. The president was very clear. And we knew that despite all the beautiful projections in the IMF-supported program, it was not sufficient to deliver inclusive growth. And George, I'm going to come back to this because when we met the IMF, the team that worked on the regional economic outlook, we put the same questions to them. Because the point is that if you look at the growth that we have celebrated in our part of the world, it has been largely jobless growth. It wasn't inclusive. And said growth is not sustainable. Look, George, I just want to take your mind back to a couple of years back. In 2018, 6 out of the 10 fastest growing economies were all in Africa. Ghana was leading. 2018. In fact, in 2019, in April 2019, when the IMF did their regional economic forecast, Ghana's economy was projected to be the fastest growing economy in 2019. Check Ministry of Finance website and all of that, right? So then fast forward, just a couple of years down the line, here is Ghana. In that, the 6 out of the 10 fastest growing economies, okay, included Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Ethiopia, I think Djibouti and the other countries, right? So look at where Ghana is right now. So the point is that, and we know that the kind of growth that we have celebrated, driven largely by hydrocarbon production, mining, that is growth. That growth is jobless. That growth is not job rich. Growth is only sustainable if it's job rich, if it's inclusive. So those are the, and that is why we are saying that even if you look at the growth that IMF is projecting for Ghana, is insufficient. Okay, and if you look at the growth for Southern Africa, it's still insufficient. I mean, if you correct for population, it leaves very little on the table. And also, so we should be looking at how do we drive inclusive growth that is innovative. And I think that is where we are lacking. And I believe that in the conversation going forward, we should be looking at how do we engineer job-rich growth that would work in moderate and low income earners, growth that will also come along with job creation. That's the only way that growth will be sustainable and can deliver the kind of, and remember, growth is not the same as development. And if you look at the way IMF supported programs are structured, on the average, they are meant to deliver immediate results, headline results. But the price you have to pay in achieving that short-term growth or stability could actually undermine your medium to long-term growth prospects, right? And so, for instance, today we are celebrating inflation of 25%. The IMF, per the original economic calculation, they are looking at inflation of 10% or below 10%. Ghana's inflation is 25%. If you look at the regional disaggregation, and you even look at food inflation, right, it's still very high. If you look at locally produced inflation, it's even higher than imported inflation. There are nuances. There are things that we should be able to look at the granular data to fashion out specific policies going forward. But George, compared to Zambia, part of why we see that Ghana's honeymoon didn't last for that long is the fact that I don't think that Ghana has the right leadership right now to back the IMF supported program. That's it. And the reason that is important is that even if we get all the inflows from the IMF and our development partners, this is an economy worth more than $70 billion. It's so small. So what we need to do is to align leadership, right, that inspires hope. Is very important. Look, we will always come back to what the president was doing when we were going through COVID-19. We saw leadership that was regularly updating the market, right, and rallying experts across the political divide. You needed that because we needed that to be able to improve the investment climate and attract foreign direct investment and portfolio flows to complement whatever inflows we are getting from the IMF supported program and the rest of them. So once you are not doing that, then, and look, there isn't much confidence in the economy, right? And therefore, investors are adopting the attitude of wait and see. It's not only just foreign investors, even within here, people who have dollars would prefer to keep it because
I'll come to you on the city. I will do a special one on the city with you. But I will also come back to you and get your thoughts on, again, as an economist, the reality between the macro numbers and the fund, and again, and Prof, I mean, you engage them so much. And sometimes I pinch myself and want to establish that what is driving their optimism. Comments like the West is over, growth is going to accelerate from next year, we've seen the West, and all those things. But for the Ajua Mansa at Makwala, she's still complaining, Prof. And I'll be coming to you to help me in translating those macro numbers that is driving the IMF's optimism about this program and the reality on the ground. Let me bring in Mr. Magbedu. And for you at businesses, what are you seeing? Has the program brought the stability that we're all looking forward to? And I mentioned the Zambia, and Prof was coming to that, but I'll come back to him again on the currency bit. There are some who say that, listen, from 50% inflation, 25%, from an era where the city was virtually depreciating every day, there is some stability. Or
well, if you look at the objectives of the IMF program, 3 main objectives. One is to restore macroeconomic stability. The second one is to ensure debt sustainability. And the third one is to lay the foundation for inclusive growth. So on that score, they are measuring their performance at the macro level. They are looking at inflation. Of course, we've seen a drop in inflation from the 54% to the 25% that we have. We've seen an improvement in the gross international reserve. But at the micro level, that is where, as businesses, we are feeling the pinch.
which is?
The macro level is not translating into the micro. The linkage is not that strong. That is why the third objective is number 3, because you have to achieve the first one, the second one, and then you move to the third one. And the third one is where the businesses are. You want to achieve inclusive growth. Now, look at the macro level. So they will say that because you have seen inflation, they have achieved to some level part of the but for the business person who is down there, they are yet to feel the positive impact of this macro achievement that they are talking about. You made mention of depreciation. In fact, when the IMF program was announced, the honeymoon was there. We saw some level of stability. That is why I agree with Prof that the IMF program is not sufficient enough. It's a necessary condition, but not sufficient condition for us to move out of the deterioration that we were. So now we are experiencing a rapid depreciation of the local currency. At the beginning of the year to now, it's been about close to 50% depreciation. It means you have lost a huge sum of value for you as a business. Now, this program also came with certain conditionalities that is affecting businesses. They want to increase revenue. And of course, to do that, the main focus was taxation. And we know the impact of some of the taxes that they introduced on businesses. They are not necessarily generating revenue, but they are negatively impacting the activities of the businesses. So for the person down there who is producing, 1, there is a depreciation. 2, there is this number of taxes that are affecting them. In recent times, if you have monitored, we have seen also fuel prices going up. And it's coming at a time where we are experiencing doom. So for the person who is producing, the IMF man or woman, whoever is talking, did they even factor doom so in their projections? But now businesses have to grapple with power outages. At this level, most of them are relying on generators with fuel prices going up. So it's creating an additional cost to businesses. An inflation of 25%, for me, is very high. When you spoke to the woman, he said on average, in Africa, they are doing 6% or so. Ours is 25%. If you look at Bank of Ghana's target, inflation target is 8% plus or minus 2. Let's give them the plus and add it's 10. Ours is 25. So we are 15 percentage points above the target inflation. And you know the effect of inflation. Now, most businesses, if you talk to them, sales have gone down significantly. And of course, that may be one of the reasons why those multinationals are running away.
Is that a situation that say people are not buying in terms of the consumables?
Yes, people are not buying because they don't have money. People are not buying because their purchasing power have reduced drastically. People are not buying because the things that we are importing, they have the effect of this depreciation in them. If you're a manufacturing company and you want to import raw materials, you'll be affected by this depreciation. You go to your production processes, it becomes part of your cost. You add it to your prices. And this is that you cannot increase your price as high as the rate at which cost of operations are going up. Because there are several components of the cost of operation. I've just given you a few of them.
But Mr. Bedu, some have argued that some of your members and businesses, there's that level of speculative, the fear that things are going to get worse. So you are rushing to demand the dollars, and the side effect of this is what it's telling on all of us.
George, and that is where confidence in the economy is very important.
So it's true that your members are rushing to demand dollars when they don't actually need it. They are afraid that things are going to get bad.
You see, they are rational people. And if you don't have confidence and the rate at which the cedi is depreciating, some of them would anticipate that the cedi will depreciate further and may be doing that. It's not good for the stability of the local currency. It's not good at all, because people are speculating. And you know, when people speculate, it has a lot of impact on vulnerability, on the variability of the local currency. So speculation is not good at all. But we have forced people to speculate. Now, it's not only on the local people who are speculating. The foreign investors are also speculating. Those who are now transferring their profit because you are in April, they have to transfer money to their shareholders outside, now also want the dollar, putting more pressure on the dollar. So, George, the IMF optimism may be fair at the macro level and at their level because they have been able to achieve part of the objective. But when you get down, the situation is totally different. The ordinary woman who has some small shop somewhere and is working is not feeling this IMF positive impact on the economy. The individual who has some money and wants to buy something, the rate at which prices are going, they're also not feeling the impact. So I think that the link between the macro and the micro is not there. I have said that most of the times we talk about the macro and leave the micro, but they have to work together. If the macro will be strong, the micro will have to be strong. If we have businesses that are producing and they are making profit, they will pay the tax, government will get the revenue, and government will not go and borrow.
Mr. Bedu, I'll be coming to you on the bit about the Ghana cedi, and I'll bring in Prof. as well. What should be done right now? Because it appears that things might be getting out of it, even though the Bank of Ghana might have strong reserves and they are being tactical on their intervention. Also look at the business environment as well. What needs to be done in the midst of dropping demand and all the rest? What has to be done? This is PM Express Business Edition as we look at the IMF program and Ghana's economic recovery. What needs to be done to ensure that this program impacts positively on the broader economy and businesses? I've been engaging Professor Godfrey Bokpin, he's an economist at Zoom, and also Magbedu Abaji, Chief Executive of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We take a short break and be right back to continue with our discussion.